Maria Bosey's story begins with what seemed like a fresh start, a transatlantic marriage that brought her from England to the quiet, sun-drenched desert town of Boulder City, Nevada. She married David Kent Fitch in April 1999, and shortly after their wedding, the couple settled in Lakeshore Trailer Village, part of the Lake Mead National Recreational Area. But within months, Maria would vanish without a trace, and the idyllic promise of her new life would unravel into a chilling mystery. Fitch had a past riddled with deception. Convicted in Arizona in 1991 for manufacturing counterfeit currency and selling marijuana, his criminal record painted a troubling picture. Authorities still wonder if Maria knew about her husband's history when she married him. Maria was last seen at her trailer between September 4th and September 9th, 1999. Her final known communication was a phone call to her caretaker in England on September 4th. After that, silence. She was never heard from again. Strangely, Fitch never reported her missing. Instead, he spun a series of contradictory stories. To neighbors and her caretaker, he claimed Maria had gone to Vancouver, British Columbia. To park rangers, he said she had returned to Romania to visit her mother. Meanwhile, he quietly disposed of her belongings, her clothes, her car, everything that marked her presence. The first red flag came from Citibank. In mid-September, the bank tried to contact Maria in England about a series of suspicious $1,000 withdrawals from her account. The transactions began on September 7th, and all took place in Hendersonville, Nevada. Concerned, the bank's inquiries triggered a deeper investigation. Authorities soon sealed Maria's trailer, treating it as a potential crime scene since it was located on federal land. Then, in February 2000, Fitch's world began to crumble. He was pulled over for speeding in Hendersonville while driving Maria's Ford Thunderbird. When authorities searched a vehicle and 2 storage units he rented nearby, they made disturbing discoveries. The units contained firearms, ammunition, and chilling literature, books about how to kill people and how to change your identity. Fitch, a convicted felon, wasn't allowed to possess firearms, so his arrest was inevitable. But the discoveries pointed to something far darker. Fitch admitted to withdrawing money from Maria's account after she disappeared and even cashing a $40,000 check in her name. But his deception didn't end there. Authorities uncovered that, under the alias David Lee Krause, he had traveled to England in January 2000 and married a Colombian woman named Patricia Milano Gutierrez. He was still legally married to Maria at the time. Investigators, alarmed by this pattern, feared for Patricia's safety, but she was located unharmed. Fitch's web of lies seemed to stretch in every direction. Aliases were a hallmark of Fitch's life. He used names like Dr. David, Dr. D.K. Fitch, James O'Callahan, Daniel Joseph O'Hare, Michael Bosey, and even Mario Bosey. He paid a man named David Lee Krause $200 to borrow his identity. In his storage units, investigators also found forged documents with Maria's signature. They believe he had even tried to coerce others into impersonating her over the phone to access her funds. In July 2000, Fitch pleaded guilty to 10 counts of firearms possession and fraudulent document charges. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison. But the story didn't end there. After his release, he faced further charges of bank fraud, money laundering, and unauthorized use of Maria's credit cards. He pleaded guilty and received a 22-year prison sentence. The judge, in an extraordinary move, cited clear and convincing evidence that Fitch had murdered Maria, despite the fact that he had never been formally charged in connection with her disappearance. Fitch's family painted a picture of a man steeped in lies. His father revealed to the media that Fitch often fabricated stories about his career, claiming he worked on overseas oil rigs. The truth was far less glamorous and far more sinister. His father also mentioned that Fitch had been married at least 3 times and fathered at least 5 children. To this day, Maria Bosey's fate remains unknown. Her body has never been found, and Fitch continues to deny any involvement in her disappearance. But the evidence, the financial manipulation, the false stories, the violent history, tells a different story. Authorities are convinced foul play was involved, and Fitch remains the prime suspect. Everly's Cabrera's disappearance in North Las Vegas on June 10, 2006, remains one of Nevada's most disturbing and unresolved mysteries, raising serious questions about foster care oversight and accountability. At just 2 years old, Everly's vanished under circumstances that continue to haunt both her biological family and the community at large. Everly's and her younger brother had been placed in the foster care of V and Manuel Carrasco. According to the Carrascos, they last saw Everly's around 1 a.m., asleep in her bed. By 8 a.m., she was reportedly gone. The Carrascos suggested that the toddler had somehow unlocked the front door and wandered off on her own. However, their actions in the aftermath of her disappearance raised immediate suspicions. They didn't report Everly's missing until noon, 4 hours after they claimed to have discovered her absence. The timeline provided by the Carrascos has been a major point of contention. Investigators noted that no one outside the foster family had seen Everly's for nearly a month prior to her disappearance. The last confirmed sighting was on May 15, 2006, when her biological parents, Marlena Olivas and Ernesto Cabrera, visited her. This discrepancy cast doubt on the Carrascos' version of events. Further complicating the investigation, the Carrascos ceased cooperating with authorities early on and invoked their Fifth Amendment rights when questioned in court. Their refusal to provide information only deepened the mystery and heightened suspicions. The Carrascos' history as foster parents raised serious red flags. There were prior incidents of neglect and possible abuse, including burn incidents. On the day her parents last saw Everly's, they noticed a burn on her hand, which was never explained. Additionally, a previous foster child had suffered severe second and third degree burns under the Carrascos' care. V. Carrasco claimed the child was burned by hot soup, but he wasn't taken to the hospital until 8 hours later. Neglect concerns. The Carrascos had a pattern of demanding the removal of children placed in their care and failed to complete required foster parent training. Despite these issues, their foster care license was renewed shortly before Everly's disappearance. Moreover, their adult son, who lived in the home, was never subjected to the mandatory criminal background check. In 2006, Everly's biological parents filed a lawsuit against the Carrascos and the Clark County Department of Family Services, alleging negligence. The case was settled in 2007 for $300,000, the maximum payout under the Carrascos insurance policy. While this settlement released the Carrascos from future civil liability, it did not absolve them of suspicion. Notably, the couple's failure to provide information or cooperate with authorities remains a significant barrier to resolving the case. Everly's parents, who lived in El Monte, California at the time, had their children placed in foster care after her brother tested positive for drugs at birth. Despite the tragic loss of Everly's, they later decided to surrender their parental rights for their other children, allowing them to be adopted by a different foster family. They believed this decision was in the best interest of their sons, who had bonded with their foster family. Authorities continue to consider the Carrascos as central figures in the investigation, though they have not been officially labeled suspects. The circumstances surrounding Everly's disappearance remain murky, and the lack of physical evidence or credible leads has stalled progress. Her case remains open, and the unanswered questions continue to weigh heavily on her biological family and the wider community. On the warm summer afternoon of June 26, 1978, 16-year-old Sandra Butler left her family's apartment in Sparks, Nevada, to visit the Greenbury Shopping Center just across the street. Sandra, described by her family as a sweet and responsible teenager, never returned home. At the time, authorities assumed she had run away, and the initial investigation into her disappearance was minimal. Sandra's family, however, has always maintained that she would never have left of her own accord. Sandra had recently moved to Nevada from California with her family and was attending Reed High School in Sparks. She had expressed excitement about exploring her new surroundings, and on the day she disappeared, she had also received her mother's permission to ride her bike to the Reno Rodeo at the nearby fairgrounds. This was a cherished local event and something that drew many residents, including Sandra. The circumstances of Sandra's disappearance have haunted investigators and her loved ones for decades. While there was little urgency in the early days, a chilling connection to notorious serial killer Charlene and Gerald Gallego would later emerge. The Gallegos, infamous for their crimes across California, Oregon, and Nevada, preyed on young women. Their sinister spree involved luring victims, often in public spaces, before abducting, assaulting, and ultimately murdering them. They were convicted of multiple heinous crimes, with Gerald receiving the death penalty and Charlene testifying against him in exchange for a reduced sentence. Gerald died in 2002 while on death row, and Charlene was released from prison in 1997, assuming a new identity. What ties the Gallegos to Sandra's disappearance is their known presence in the Sparks area in June 1978. A year later, almost to the day, the couple abducted and murdered two teenage girls from the same fairgrounds Sandra had planned to visit. This alarming timeline has led many to speculate that Sandra may have been one of their early victims. However, the police have never been able to definitively link the Gallegos to Sandra's case, as Charlene has not been interviewed about her disappearance. Sandra's family has never stopped searching for answers. They have consistently pushed back against the initial runaway theory, emphasizing her close ties to her family and the lack of any prior issues that might suggest she wanted to leave. Today, Sandra's case remains unsolved. She was last seen wearing jeans, a t-shirt, and tennis shoes, ordinary clothing for a teenager on a summer outing. The fairgrounds, once filled with the sounds of rodeo fans and carnival games, now hold a darker memory for those who remember Sandra's story. Beverly Bram and her brother, Gordon Douglas Bram, vanished under mysterious circumstances in Dayton, Nevada, a small town nestled in the high desert east of Carson City. Their last confirmed sighting was on November 12, 2008, but no one realized they were missing until years later, a tragic testament to their isolation and strained family connections. Beverly lived with her ex-husband, James McTavish, in what might seem an unusual arrangement. Gordon, her brother, had moved in with them 2 years prior, in 2006. According to those who knew them, Beverly had long been estranged from her children, and after she quit her job, she withdrew further from the world, becoming increasingly reclusive. This isolation, combined with a lack of close contact with family or friends, created the perfect storm for their disappearance to go unnoticed for an astonishing length of time. The story took a grim turn in January 2013, when McTavish died by suicide. His death set off a chain of events that would unravel the mystery of the missing Brams. When authorities sought to locate McTavish's next of kin, they discovered that Beverly and Gordon had been living with him but hadn't been seen or heard from in over 4 years. More troubling, there was no sign of them in the house at the time of his death. This revelation raised immediate red flags. In November 2013, 5 years after Beverly and Gordon's last sighting, they were officially reported missing. The long delay meant that crucial evidence, if any existed, had likely been lost or obscured. Photos of Gordon remain unavailable, but records indicate he was born on November 20th, 1939, making him 68 years old when he disappeared. He's described as a Caucasian man with sandy hair, standing between 5 feet 9 inches and 5 feet 11 inches, and weighing 150 to 175 pounds. Beverly's details are less documented, reflecting the reclusive life she led. The circumstances surrounding their disappearances remain murky. There were no obvious signs of foul play, but questions abound. Why did no one notice their absence sooner? What was the nature of their relationship with McTavish? Did their secluded lifestyle mask a deeper, more sinister story? The house they shared, once a silent witness to their lives, offered no clear answers. Investigators have speculated about possible scenarios, but without tangible evidence or leads. The fate of Beverly and Gordon Bram remains in mystery. Trevor Angel was a long-haul truck driver working for Cool X Transport in Calgary, Alberta, back in 2000. He had a routine that took him across international borders, hauling meat from Canada into the United States and returning with produce. It was a grueling job, but one he had done for a while. In September of that year, he was on what he told his wife would be his last run. He planned to take a load of bananas from Calgary to Los Angeles, then return with another shipment. After that, he wanted to quit the trucking industry for good, settle down, and spend more time with his wife and young son. But something went wrong. Trevor never made it back home. On September 22, 2000, while en route to deliver the return shipment to Canada, Trevor stopped at Whiskey Pete's, a bar and casino in Primm, Nevada. It wasn't unusual for him to stop there. Trevor enjoyed gambling and drinking, and his loved one said he often visited Whiskey Pete's during his trips between Los Angeles and Calgary. But this time was different. Trevor was never seen again after that stop, and his truck was later found abandoned in the casino's parking lot. Inside the truck, authorities found Trevor's wallet. His driver's license and credit cards were still there, but any cash he had was gone. The truck's cargo was untouched, and the refrigerator had run out of fuel. There were no immediate signs of foul play, but Trevor had vanished without a trace. Things got even stranger. Someone had used Trevor's ATM card to withdraw money 9 separate times, starting on September 22nd and continuing until around 4 a.m. on September 23rd. The withdrawals emptied his entire paycheck. The question was, who had the card, and where was Trevor? A waitress at Whiskey Pete's later told investigators that she had served Trevor around 10 a.m. on September 23rd, the morning after he was last officially seen. According to her, he bought a simple meal, oatmeal, and paid with pocket change. It was an odd detail. Why would Trevor, who had just been paid, be digging for spare change to buy food? Later that day, there were reports of Trevor being seen in the casino's parking lot. Witnesses described a troubling scene. He looked sick, clutching his stomach, disoriented. He even asked someone for help. But by the time authorities pieced his timeline together, Trevor was long gone. Trevor's family was left grappling with more questions than answers. They knew he had been feeling burned out. Truck driving had taken its toll on him, and he had been talking about making a change. He wanted to be home more, to be there for his son. But would he really just walk away from everything, leaving his family in the dark? The police didn't rule it out. They considered the possibility that Trevor might have disappeared intentionally, but his family had their doubts. In December 2001, over a year after Trevor vanished, there were reported sightings of him in Texas. But nothing came of it. The sightings were never confirmed, and the trail went cold again. Trevor's disappearance left a void in the lives of those who loved him. His wife eventually divorced him and remarried. Her new husband adopted the son she and Trevor had together, trying to build a new life. But she never completely closed the door on the past. She kept the same phone number, just in case Trevor ever tried to reach out. Today, Trevor Angel's case remains a mystery. There's no definitive evidence of what happened to him that night at Whiskey Pete's. Did he fall victim to foul play? Did he suffer a medical emergency and wander off into the desert, disoriented and alone? Or did he, as some believe, decide to leave his old life behind and start over somewhere else? Cheryn Berle was last seen on July 19, 2020, in Henderson, Nevada. After that day, she vanished, leaving behind a family desperate for answers and a chilling trail of events that would later expose the horrifying truth of her fate. Her disappearance, though initially shrouded in uncertainty, soon revealed the grim reality of the abuse she had endured behind closed doors. In late September 2020, Cheryl's silver 2011 Ford Fusion was discovered abandoned on Fiesta Way, near Desert Inn and Boulder Highway. This discovery raised alarm bells, but there was still no sign of Cheryn herself. Her boyfriend, Philip O'Reilly, told her family that she had simply left him for another man. It was a story that might have seemed plausible at first glance, but those who knew Cheryn weren't convinced. They knew her well, and the pieces didn't fit. Her family painted a much darker picture of her relationship with O'Reilly. According to them, he was a controlling presence in her life. He wouldn't let her contact them openly, so she had to find ways to keep in touch with her loved ones in secret. It was a precarious situation, but Cheryn made the effort because she loved her family, especially her children. At the time of her disappearance, she had 3 kids, a toddler with O'Reilly and 2 older children from a previous relationship. By all accounts, she was a devoted mother, and the idea that she would just walk away from her children seemed unthinkable. The true horror of Cheryn's life began to emerge through the testimonies of those who knew her best, her 2 older children, who were just 11 and 14 at the time. They revealed the terrifying abuse they had witnessed. O'Reilly wasn't just controlling, he was violent. He had reportedly whipped Cheryn with a dog leash, and the children themselves had suffered abuse at his hands. They described seeing their mother on the day she disappeared, beaten, bloodied, and barely recognizable. It was the last time they would ever see her. Then there was the chilling confession O'Reilly reportedly made to his adopted sister around that same time. He told her he might have killed Cheryn. It was a statement that would take on devastating significance as the investigation unfolded. In September 2021, over a year after Cheryn vanished, O'Reilly was charged with her murder. As he awaited trial, the case took an even darker turn. O'Reilly allegedly tried to orchestrate a violent plot from behind bars. He reportedly offered a fellow inmate $20,000 to kill 4 witnesses set to testify against him, among them Cheryn's own children. This attempt to silence those who knew the truth only reinforced the depths of his cruelty. Facing the weight of the evidence and the prospect of a death sentence, O'Reilly made a plea deal in April 2023. He pleaded guilty to murder and, in a chilling confession, admitted to torturing Cheryn to death. The horror didn't end there. He revealed that after killing her, he destroyed her body and disposed of it in dumpsters scattered across the southeast Las Vegas Valley. Despite exhaustive efforts to locate her remains, Cheryn's body has never been found. For Cheryn's family, the confession brought some semblance of closure, but the pain of her loss remains. Her children have been left to grapple with the trauma of what they witnessed and the absence of a mother who loved them deeply. Philip O'Reilly is now serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Patrick Carnes' mysterious disappearance on April 13, 2011, in rural Nevada remains a haunting case with eerie parallels and unsettling circumstances. At 86 years old, Carnes was a World War II veteran and a former truck driver, known for his independence and good health. His sudden vanishing, along with his beloved dog, Lucky, has left his family and investigators searching for answers amidst a series of unexplained clues. Carnes was on his way home to Reno, Nevada, after visiting relatives in Toledo, Ohio. Around 9 p.m. on April 13th, he was stopped by the Nevada Highway Patrol near Wells, Nevada, for a traffic violation. During this interaction, Carnes mentioned he was following a truck driver who was headed to Elko, Nevada. This trucker was never identified, and the circumstances surrounding their connection remain unknown. By the next morning, around 6 a.m., Carnes' green Subaru Forester was found abandoned at the 205 Pumpernickel Valley exit ramp off Interstate 80 near Winnemucca. The vehicle was high-centered in sagebrush, facing the wrong direction and stuck, but still operable, with gas in the tank. Inside, all of Carnes' personal belongings, including his checkbook, were untouched. There were no signs of a struggle or any indication of what might have happened to him or Lucky. A single set of footprints led away from the vehicle, suggesting Carnes may have wandered off on his own. However, this theory raises significant questions. Why would Carnes leave his vehicle behind in the middle of the night? And where did Lucky, his 80 to 100-pound Akita mix, go? Carnes rarely traveled without Lucky, and the dog's disappearance adds another layer of mystery. Adding to the strangeness of the case is the fact that Carnes' car was found at the same exit where Judith Casita's vehicle was discovered in 2006. Casita, another Nevada resident, disappeared without a trace, and her case remains unsolved. Although authorities have not found any direct connection between the 2 cases, the coincidence is difficult to ignore, especially given the remote and desolate location. Possible theories include 1. Encounter with the truck driver. Carnes' mention of following a trucker has fueled speculation that he might have been abducted or met with foul play. Some investigators believe Carnes could have been targeted by someone posing as a helpful truck driver, or that he inadvertently witnessed something illegal. 2. Disorientation and exposure. Another theory is that Carnes, perhaps disoriented or seeking help after his vehicle got stuck, wandered off and succumbed to the elements. However, this doesn't explain why his dog also vanished without a trace. 3. Serial killer or predator. The connection to Judith Casita's disappearance has led to speculation about a possible predator targeting isolated travelers along Interstate 80. The vast, open stretches of Nevada's highways provide ample opportunity for such crimes to go unnoticed. Carnes was a well-respected World War II veteran who had served in the Solomon Islands and later worked as a truck driver. His family describes him as resourceful, healthy, and close-knit. His sudden disappearance has left him without closure, and the lack of evidence or leads has made the case particularly challenging. Unanswered questions. Who is the truck driver Carnes mentioned? Why did Carnes' vehicle end up high-centered in sagebrush? What happened to Lucky, and why were there no signs of struggle or injury at the scene? Could Carnes have been the victim of a crime linked to the same unknown danger that might have taken Judith Casita? Patrick Carnes' disappearance remains a troubling enigma. Despite extensive searches and ongoing investigations, no trace of him or Lucky has ever been found.